morning. My name is Tom Ílóbí, and thank you for hosting me at this very important and timely conference. His Excellency Dr. Saeed Al-Sakri, Your Highnesses and Excellencies, honourable members of the State Council, distinguished guests, Al Royan newspaper and Oman Data Park, thank you very much for hosting me on this occasion. I'm going to share my screen so that I can take you through the topic that I want to discuss. So Crossword Cybersecurity is a British cybersecurity company that works with universities and shares knowledge from universities with organizations and commercial companies. And we, in fact, are planning to establish a cybersecurity business in Oman later this year with key Omani partners, and we look forward to sharing our expertise with you. In particular, this morning, I want to share some insights into what's happening around an area called supply chain attacks, which are growing very quickly. We all know that there are a number of attacks going on across businesses, and we're very aware of that. But what do we need to prepare for that are coming up over the next few years, and in fact are becoming increasingly difficult problems today? The problems that we're facing now are what are called cyber supply chain attacks. This is where an attacker attacks your supply chain and tries to damage the organization by targeting the weak links in your supply chain. So we spend a lot of time, money, and effort as organizations defending the front of our organization. As you can see in the graphic here, we put up big walls. We make sure the attackers can't attack us from the front. But what they're doing is looking for opportunities to attack us from behind. And the way they do that is to attack the supply chain. This is a bit like you spend all your time and effort locking the front door, putting on chains and bars on the front door of your house, but you leave the back door wide open. And attackers know that this is what organizations and businesses do all the time. They spend all their effort, a lot of their effort, on the front door and leave the back door wide open. So let me give you two real-world examples of what has happened in this area. There's a company called Target in the States, a major USA retailer, and Target was targeted in this sort of attack. The attack was very clever. The attackers managed to steal 40 million customer credit and debit card details. And in total, something like 70 million customers' information was compromised. The way they did this was to install malware on the cash registers in 1,800 stores belonging to Target, so that every time those cash registers were used by a customer to use their credit and debit card details, the malware copied the details of the credit and debit card straight back to the attackers behind the scenes. It was sitting there copying credit and debit card details across 1,800 stores. The question then arises, how did the attackers manage to get their malware onto the cash registers in 1,800 stores of this organization? And by the way, let me tell you, this organization was spending large amounts of money, millions of dollars, on protecting itself from a cybersecurity point of view. In fact, apparently it had recently started another $1.6 million upgrade of its new cybersecurity defenses while this attack was going on, the attackers launched a supply chain attack. They looked for the weakest link, and the weakest link that they found was a company, a supplier that provided air conditioning systems to target, what are called HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. The attackers stole details, login details from the air conditioning supplier and used those details in order to attack the supplier, in order to attack target. The total impact was tremendous. An estimated cost to target of around $300 million, which was offset to some extent by cyber insurance policy. Over 80 civil lawsuits, the CEO lost their job. So you can see that when attackers decide they're going to target a supplier in order to get into whoever they want to go after, it can have a profound impact. I'll give you one other example. SolarWinds, a very recent attack that took place last year. Hackers compromised SolarWinds. SolarWinds is an IT infrastructure company, and hackers compromised the company. They took at least 3 months setting up the attack. They were very patient, very slow, very patient to try and understand the systems. And it took them over 3 months in order to prepare and set up the attack. Their approach was to get into and compromise the build systems. These are the systems that update SolarWinds software. So when a company updates its software, it then does a build in order to prepare the software, the new version of the software, to be delivered. These hackers managed to compromise the build system so that they could install their malware, their Trojans, including remote access tools, into the updated software. What that meant was that when the clients of SolarWinds updated the SolarWinds software, not only did they update the SolarWinds software, at the same time as they were updating the SolarWinds software, they were also downloading the hackers' software onto their own systems. And they were now infected with these malware tools. The hackers then had direct access into the clients, and they used that direct access using their remote access tools to install more tools that then gave them access to emails and documents in the client system. Out of something like 33,000 SolarWinds clients, something like 18,000 were vulnerable to this attack. 18,000 companies and organizations around the world were vulnerable to this attack. It's been described as the worst incident ever suffered by the USA. People have said that thousands of organizations globally have been impacted by this attack. The hackers had access into all of these organizations for at least 8 or 9 months before it was finally discovered. They were very quiet, very sophisticated, very quiet. They got into the systems and they just quietly stayed in the systems, accessing emails, accessing documents, accessing data, not causing a fuss, not bringing the systems down or anything, just observing and accessing for 8 or 9 months until it was discovered. Organizations in governments, technology, consulting, oil and gas across North America, Europe, Asia, Middle East were all impacted by this attack. It was a very, very successful supply chain attack. And you can see the difference between the two examples that I've given. One was very focused on a particular company, Target. How do we access that company? Let's look for the supplier that has the weakest link. Let's attack that supplier. And through that supplier, let's get into the company. The other one, SolarWinds, was wide and far. Let's compromise a provider of IT infrastructure, and by doing that, let's access thousands of other companies across the world. They are both examples of supply chain attacks, which are different to the normal attacks that you see. What do you need to do to defend yourself against supply chain attacks? What you need to do is to carry out supplier assurance. And there are three things that you need to do there. You need to analyze, you need to assure, and you need to assess. To analyze, you need to understand the risks that suppliers may pose in your organization. There'll be some of them that are no risk at all. They're suppliers to your organization, but they have no access to data, no access to your system. They're low risk. There are others that will be high risk. You need to analyze them. You need to understand your full supply chain. If you called in your supplier manager today and said, how many suppliers have we got? What countries are they in? What levels of sophistication? Who are their subcontractors? Would they be able to answer that question today? Do they have that information? Would they give to you? You need to assure your systems. You have the right, in most cases, to audit your supply chain. So you will need to use that right to go to your key suppliers, not all of your suppliers, but your key suppliers, and ask them about their security standards. If you have, for example, 500 suppliers, it may be that only 50 of them are the ones that you need to audit in detail. Which are those 50? And have you audited them? And have you checked their level of cybersecurity? Because if their cybersecurity is weak, your cybersecurity is weak. It doesn't matter how much you spend on yourself. If your key suppliers' cybersecurity is weak, your cybersecurity is weak. And you need to set minimum standards for your suppliers. For example, in the UK, we have a standard called Cyber Essentials. This is the minimum standard that most government departments would expect a supplier to have. And that's an important point. You would expect, and a good way to drive this throughout the country is for key government departments to say, if you want to be a supplier to our department, you have to adhere to this minimum standard. And here it is laid out and confirmed to us that you meet this minimum standard. And then you have to assess on an ongoing basis. This isn't a one-off exercise. You need to provide guidance to your key suppliers and you need to monitor their effectiveness. So you will be looking to come back perhaps every year to your key suppliers and say to them, tell us the updates you've done to your systems, confirm to us that the information you gave to us a year ago is still current and you are still as secure as you were a year ago. To do this effectively and methodically, you will need some sort of supplier assurance platform that enables you to capture all the information in one place in a dashboard so that you can look across your suppliers and see which ones are red, which ones are amber, which ones are green, which ones you need to look into in more detail, which ones are fine, and keep them updated. And Crossword has a platform called Risicon that we use for this, and we will be bringing to Oman at some point over the coming year. But there are other platforms as well. The key thing is that in your organization, you have a supplier assurance platform that enables you to methodically look through your suppliers and make sure that they are secure. So, just to conclude, in order to protect yourself against supplier attacks, which are a growing problem, you need to protect the back door of your organization as well as the front door of your organization. And that means checking that your supplier's cybersecurity posture is as mature as your own cybersecurity posture. You do that by analyzing, assuring, and assessing. And to do that in a methodical way, you need a robust supplier assurance platform that will enable you to do that in a rigorous way. Thank you very much for inviting me.